cabin stood at the edge of a vast forest, its wooden frame soaked by the drizzle that had started earlier that evening. It was supposed to be a getaway, a weekend of laughter, games, and memories. That's what Elena had promised when she invited us. 2 nights, no phones, no distractions, she had said with her usual enthusiasm. Just us, the woods, and a lot of fun. I wasn't sure why I agreed to come. Maybe it was the way Elena could make anything sound exciting. Or maybe it was because I didn't want to feel left out. Either way, here I was, standing in the cabin's cozy but dimly lit living room, surrounded by people I only half knew. And Elena, of course, was the center of it all, her energy infectious, her laugh loud and unapologetic. She was the one who brought everyone together, even if some of us didn't quite get along. There was Liam, her boyfriend, quiet but observant, always lingering in the background. Then there was Clara, Elena's best friend, who seemed polite on the surface, but had a sharpness to her words that could cut if you weren't careful. And then there was Jack. He had an easy charm about him, the kind that made you like him instantly, even if you didn't want to. Finally, there was me, Ava. I was the outsider, the one who didn't quite fit in with this group. The night started innocently enough. Elena made us play card games, Liam cooked dinner, and Jack kept the wine flowing. By the time the rain turned into a full-blown storm, we were all comfortably buzzed, laughing over stories from college, and daring each other to tell embarrassing secrets. "This is the perfect vibe for something spooky," Jack said, leaning back in his chair. Clara rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. Don't tell me you believe in ghosts." Jack smirked. "I'm just saying. Cabins, woods, a storm. It's the perfect setup for a murder mystery." Liam raised an eyebrow. "Let's hope no one here is a secret killer then." Or maybe we should play a game," Elena suggested, her eyes lighting up. "A game?" I asked, already regretting my decision to come. "Yeah," she said, standing up. "We'll play whodunit. It's like a murder mystery party. One person is the killer, and the rest of us have to figure out who it is." "Sounds fun," Jack said, pouring himself another glass of wine. Clara sighed, but didn't protest. Liam gave a small nod. "All right," Elena said, clapping her hands. "Let's set it up." Elena explained the rules quickly. We each drew a slip of paper, one of which secretly assigned someone as the killer. The lights would go out, and the killer would tap someone on the shoulder, killing them. When the lights came back on, we'd have to figure out who the killer was. It seemed simple enough, though the storm outside added a layer of unease. Elena dimmed the lights. "All right, everyone ready?" I nodded, though my heart raced a little faster than I wanted to admit. She flipped the light switch, plunging the room into darkness. At first, there was silence. I could hear the faint patter of rain against the windows, the creak of the floor as someone shifted their weight. My breathing sounded too loud in the stillness. Then came a sound, a faint rustling, like someone moving quickly. A scream broke the silence. The lights flickered back on, and all eyes turned toward Liam. He was lying on the floor, unmoving. "Liam?" Elena said, her voice shaky. But Liam didn't move. "Elena, stop," Clara said, her tone flat. "We all know he's pretending. That's part of the game." Elena hesitated, then laughed nervously. "Right, of course." But something about Liam's stillness made my stomach churn, The accusations started immediately. "It has to be Jack," Clara said, crossing her arms. "He's the one who suggested this game in the first place." Jack laughed. "Me? Why would I kill Liam? That's way too obvious." "Maybe you thought it'd throw us off," Clara shot back. Elena ignored them, crouching down beside Liam. "Okay, game over," she said, shaking him gently. "Liam, you can get up now." But Liam didn't move. "Elena, stop messing around," Clara said, her voice tinged with annoyance. "I'm not messing around," Elena snapped, her tone rising. The room fell silent as the reality began to sink in. Liam wasn't pretending. "Is he—" Jack started but trailed off, his usual confidence replaced by unease. I took a step closer, my heart pounding. "Check his pulse," I said. My voice trembled as she pressed her fingers against Liam's neck. She pulled them back almost instantly, her face pale. "He's dead," she whispered. The words hit like a thunderclap. "No," Clara said, shaking her head. "This is part of the game, right? It has to be." "Elena," Jack said slowly, "tell me this isn't real." Elena didn't answer. The storm outside raged on, the wind howling as if mocking us. "This isn't a game anymore," I said, my voice trembling. "Someone killed him." The air inside the cabin was suffocating. Liam's lifeless body lay on the floor, and no one dared to move. The storm outside raged louder, the howling wind and pounding rain creating a backdrop that matched the chaos in the room. Elena knelt beside Liam, her trembling hands hovering over him. "This can't be happening," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Jack broke the silence, his voice low but sharp. "Someone in this room killed him." "No," Clara said immediately, shaking her head. "That's insane." "This is still part of the game, right? It has to be." "It's not a game, Clara," I said, my voice trembling. "Liam is dead." Her expression hardened, but fear flickered in her eyes. Elena stood abruptly, her face pale. "We need to call the police," she said, reaching for her phone. "No signal," Jack reminded her, holding up his own phone. "We're too far out." "There's a landline," Clara said, pointing toward the corner of the room. Elena rushed to the phone, her shaky hands dialing quickly, but after a moment she slammed the receiver down. "It's dead," she said, her voice breaking. "Of course it is," Jack muttered, pacing the room. "This is exactly how these things go." "Jack, stop," I said, my frustration bubbling to the surface. "This isn't a movie." "No, it's not," he shot back. "It's worse. At least in movies you know who the killer is." Clara crossed her arms, her tone cold. "Why don't we start with the obvious? Who was standing closest to Liam when the lights went out?" Jack froze mid-step. "You're looking at me." "You've been acting suspicious all night," Clara said, her gaze icy. "You're the one who kept pushing for this stupid game." Jack's face twisted in anger. "And you're the one who can't stop accusing people. Maybe you're trying to deflect attention from yourself. Stop it," Elena shouted, her voice cracking. "This isn't helping." The room fell into an uneasy silence, but the tension between Clara and Jack was palpable. I tried to steady my breathing, my mind racing. "We need to stay together," I said finally, breaking the silence. "No one goes anywhere alone." "And then what?" Clara asked bitterly. Wait for the killer to pick us off one by one? Do you have a better idea? I snapped, surprising even myself. She didn't respond. Fine, Jack said, throwing his hands up. We stick together. But let's get one thing straight. If anyone tries anything, we're all watching. The way he looked at each of us sent a shiver down my spine. The group moved to the living room, the fire in the fireplace casting long, flickering shadows on the walls. No one spoke, the weight of suspicion hanging heavily over us. Elena sat on the couch, her knees pulled to her chest, staring blankly at the flames. I could see her struggling to hold herself together, the shock of losing Liam tearing her apart. Jack paced back and forth, his movements restless and agitated. Clara stood by the window, her arms crossed tightly, her eyes darting between us. I stayed close to Elena, unsure if it was for her comfort or my own. After what felt like an eternity, Clara broke the silence. "This doesn't make sense," she said, her voice clipped. "Why would someone kill Liam? And why now?" "Maybe it was personal," Jack suggested. "Or maybe it's random," Clara countered. "Enough," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We don't know why. All we know is that someone here did it." The words felt heavy as they left my mouth. The lights flickered again, and my chest tightened. "No," Alina whispered, standing up quickly. "Not again." The room plunged into darkness, and panic erupted. "Stay still!" Jack shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. But the sound of footsteps echoed around the room, followed by a loud crash. "Who's there?" Clara yelled, her voice shaking. No one answered. When the lights came back on, Clara was on the floor, blood pooling beneath her head. Her wide, unseeing eyes stared up at the ceiling. "Oh my God," Alina said, stumbling backward. Jack crouched beside Clara, his hands shaking as he checked for a pulse. "She's dead." Alina clung to me, her body trembling. "This can't be happening," she whispered. "Two people," Jack said, standing up slowly. "Two people dead, and we're still sitting here like idiots. What do you suggest?" I asked, my voice cracking. "We search the cabin," he said firmly. "Every inch of it. If there's someone hiding, we'll find them." "And if there's not?" I asked. "Then we know it's one of us," Jack said, his expression dark. The three of us moved through the cabin cautiously, checking every room and corner. The storm outside showed no signs of letting up, the sound of rain and thunder adding to the oppressive atmosphere. Each empty room only heightened the dread in my chest. When we regrouped in the living room, Jack looked at us, his jaw tight. "No one else is here. It's just us." Alina shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No, that's not possible. It has to be someone else." "You saw the same thing we did," Jack said coldly. "There's no one else." His words hung in the air, and I felt the fragile trust between us shatter completely. The storm raged on as the three of us stood in tense silence, each of us wondering the same thing. Who's next? The living room felt colder than before, even with the fire crackling in the background. The storm outside continued its relentless assault on the cabin, the sound of rain hammering against the windows mixing with the tension inside. Elena clutched my arm, her eyes wide with fear. Jack stood across from us, his face unreadable, his hands shoved into his jacket pockets. The air between us was thick with suspicion. "We can't stay here," Elena whispered, her voice trembling. Someone is going to kill again. And where do you suggest we go? Jack snapped. Out into the storm? That's exactly what the killer would want. Elena flinched, but I couldn't entirely disagree with Jack. We stick together, I said, trying to sound calm even as my voice shook. We can't give whoever's doing this the chance to isolate us. And what happens when they strike again, Ava? Jack said, his tone sharp. Are we just going to wait to see who's next? Her heart pounded somehow, the depth of his voice creating an intense feeling underneath. The lights flickered, and we all froze. Please, not again, Elena whispered, her grip on my arm tightening. The lights stayed on this time, but the tension in the room refused to let up. I have a question, Jack said suddenly, his tone colder now. Elena, where were you when the lights went out the first time? Elena's head snapped up, her eyes wide. What are you talking about? You were closest to Liam, Jack said, stepping closer. And you're the one who suggested this weekend in the first place. Maybe you planned all of this. That's insane, Elena shot back, tears spilling down her cheeks. Why would I kill Liam? I loved him. Jack's laugh was humorless. Love? Is that what you call it? Because from where I'm standing, all I see is a pattern. Stop it, I said, stepping between them. This isn't helping. Accusing each other isn't going to solve anything. Jack glared at me, but he didn't say anything else. We sat in silence for what felt like hours, the weight of suspicion pressing down on all of us. Elena kept glancing toward Liam's lifeless body, her face pale and stricken. Jack leaned against the wall, his arms crossed, his eyes darting between us. I tried to focus, to think logically. Someone in this room was the killer. Someone had carefully planned every move, but who? The lights flickered again, and the fire in the fireplace dimmed. I'm getting some water, Jack said suddenly, pushing off the wall. No, Elena said quickly. You're not going anywhere alone. Jack rolled his eyes. Fine, someone can come with me. Happy? I'll go, I said, standing up. Elena gave me a worried look, but I nodded reassuringly. It's fine, we'll be right back. The kitchen was dark, the only light coming from the dim overhead bulb. Jack moved to the sink, filling a glass of water. You know it's her, right? He said, his back to me. What? I asked, startled. Elena, he said, turning to face me. She's the one behind all of this. It makes sense. She planned the trip. She was closest to Liam, and she's been acting suspicious all night. She's scared, I said, my voice firm, just like we are. Jack stepped closer, his expression hard. You're too trusting, Ava. That's going to get you killed. We returned to the living room, but something was wrong. Elena, I called out, looking around. She wasn't there, Jack cursed under his breath. Great, she's running. Or hiding, I said, my heart pounding. We searched the cabin, calling out her name, but there was no answer. The storm outside had gotten worse, the sound of thunder rattling the windows. When we returned to the living room, I spotted something near the fireplace. Elena's scarf, soaked in blood. Oh no, I whispered, picking it up with shaking hands. She's gone, Jack said, his tone grim. The silence between us was unbearable. I turned to Jack, my chest tight with fear. "If she's dead, that means it's just us," I said, my voice trembling. "Yeah," Jack said, his eyes narrowing. "Just us." There was something in his tone that made my blood run cold. "You think it's me?" I said, stepping back. "I don't think anything," he said, moving closer. "But I know one thing. This ends now." "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice rising. Jack reached into his jacket and pulled out a knife. My breath caught. "Jack, what are you doing?" "I'm making sure I survive the night," he said, his voice eerily calm. I ran. The cabin's narrow halls felt like a maze as I sprinted through them, my heart pounding in my chest. Jack's footsteps echoed behind me, getting louder with every second. "You can't run forever, Ava," he shouted. I burst into the storage room, slamming the door shut and locking it. My breathing was ragged, my hands trembling as I searched for something, anything, to defend myself. Then I heard it, the sound of the lock clicking. "Help me." The door creaked open, and Jack stepped inside, his knife gleaming in the dim light. "This didn't have to happen," he said, his voice low. "Why?" I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "Why are you doing this?" He smiled, but there was no warmth in it, because someone had to be the last one standing. The fight was quick but brutal. I managed to knock the knife from his hand, but he was stronger, pinning me to the ground. As we struggled, a loud crack of thunder shook the cabin, and the lights went out one final time. When they came back on, Jack lay on the floor, motionless. Elena stood over him, holding the bloodied knife, her face pale but resolute. "I wasn't going to let him kill you," she said, her voice trembling. I stared at her, my chest heaving, but she dropped the knife, tears streaming down her face. "It wasn't supposed to be like this." And in that moment I realized the truth. Elena had planned everything. She wasn't protecting me. She was finishing what she started. If you liked my story, please like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next story.